What would happen if Izuku Midoriya ended up marrying one of the princesses of Themyscira? How would the love triangle in between both of them turn out, and how would DCA introduce all the other heroes inside of My Hero Academia? Well, figure that out as we go along, and let's start it.
Hey, BB. Cyborg looked back to where Raven was. The normally stoic girl was heading to the kitchen, humming a perky little tune with a look of pure contentment on her face. What happened to Ray? I haven't seen her this happy since fate managed to lock away her connection to old Four Eyes. Oh, she and Jinx hooked up with Izuku. Beast Boy replied, causing Robin to look up from his book. Really? About time. He said, returning back to his book, before looking back up. Wait, did you say Jinx and Raven? Yes, Robin. Raven called back, coming out with a croissant and a cup of coffee. A tray of other things was floating behind her. Izuku was our boyfriend now. Oh, that's what I thought he said. Wow, Robin, you're taking this kinda well. Cyborg said, watching his female teammate saunter back down the hall, her bare legs sticking out from under the shirt she had on. Raven and Jinx are big girls, Cyborg. He replied. If they want to ask a guy if they can share him, it's their choice. Besides, I've had snack cakes that were more conniving than Izuku, were more likely to try and protect his innocence than theirs. Anyone else notice that was one of his shirts she had on? Beast Boy added. Batman's idea, let him worry about it. When she got back to Jinx's room, the girl was currently curled up in Izuku's lap, dressed similar to Raven. Please tell me Beast Boy already ate all that tofu stuff. Jinx grimaced. That junk doesn't get along with me at all. Luckily, it was Robin's turn to cook. She said, the tray floating in to show it stacked with sausage, toast, eggs, some fruit, and a couple bottles of milk and orange juice. Let's dig in. As the three ate, Izuku felt now was the best time to bring up something he'd been wondering about. Guys, not that I didn't enjoy last night. Heck, it was unbelievable. But, why were you two so willing to sleep with me so soon? Another bonus to having empathic abilities. Raven replied. It lets me compare emotional matches to see if they'd make for good relationships. She curled up against him with her coffee. Like us. Not to mention the life of a pro superhero doesn't really leave a lot of time for dates and romance, so why bother waiting when you're about it? Also, just so you know, Jinx grinned and wiggled in his lap. Neither of us are really the possessive type. Okay, that's a good thing, right? He asked, thinking they were talking about the kind of person who didn't like their partner hanging out with others. Raven quickly picked up on it. Possessive as in, we're cool with sharing you if any other heroines catch your eye. Share? Izuku's eyes widened. Yeah, believe it or not, you wore us out. Jinx giggled, kissing him. Raven grinned. Just glad my mother taught me a couple of healing spells or we'd be walking funny for a little while. Just as she said that, Izuku's comlink beeped. Must be Batman with your training for today. Raven levitated it over to him. He quickly flicked it on. Hello? His eyes widened when the little screen showed Inko. Am Mom/Mrs. Midoriya? All three blurted out, not expecting to see her just then. Izuku. I wondered if I'd catch you this early. And I'm glad to see your girlfriends, Raven and Jinx, are there as well. How do you know about that? Jinx asked. The woman's supremely calm tone was sending a chill down her spine. Oh yes, I'm very much aware, considering I was unexpectedly treated to the sight and sounds, or your party last night. Izuku paled. His mom had seen him having sex? Why you saw? How? Just let me finish. She continued. I must admit, I'm quite surprised. And I'm afraid I only have one thing to say. Mrs. Midoriya, we can explain, honest. Raven spoke up, fearing just how badly this could turn out. Oh honey, I'm so happy for you. Inko squeaked, her voice suddenly shifting into pure glee. I have a feeling your father would be jealous if he found out. All three were more than a little dumbfounded at that. You're okay with us, but... Raven started, but Inko waved it off. Ah, don't worry about it, sweetie. I wasn't really prepared to actually see something like that. I'm just happy he found someone. Or two in this case. Little bit of advice, though, you may want to be a little more careful next time, unless you want another audience. Okay. Sure thing, Mom. Izuku replied, his voice a tad on the weak side. Raven, should we tell her we're cool with other girls getting with him too? Jinx whispered. As long as none of them are those awful punch-first tsundere types, it's fine. Inko grimaced. Can't stand girls like that. I can't believe them. They knew I liked Izuku too. An irate voice cut in through the calm. Who in the world? Inko asked. That sounds like Kara. Supergirl. Raven told her. Kara, just calm down. Another joined in, who they quickly identified as Superman. I know you're upset, but Jinx made the first dash. They could at least invited me as well. Just take a say what? It wouldn't have taken me that long to get a red solar emitter from the fortress. Superman could be heard letting out a considerable groan. I blame you, Wayne. Whoops, I knew we forgot something. Jinx winced. 3? And Supergirl? Wow, you certainly aren't doing this halfway, Izuku. A bit of pride laced his mom's voice. Thanks, Mom. Izuku blinked. Okay, so you two want me to take Izuku out on a practice patrol, right? In Gotham. Nightwing said, looking at Batman and Superman. Yeah, nothing big, just across the residential area. Superman replied, looking calm. Dick, however, saw through it. And this is in no way an attempt to keep him out of Supergirl's clutches until she's settled down. He chuckled when Batman raised an eye. Given the rant she had about it, definite props to Izuku. By the way, I think Booster Gold is the only one who hasn't heard. Both men did their best not to wince. While Mrs. Midoriya was surprisingly fine with the fact that her son had been intimate with the two goth heroines, Ma and Pa Kent were something of a different story. Namely, the idea of telling them their little girl wanted to, more or less, knock boots with a boy they had yet to meet. Nightwing knew it was a little mean, but the thought of Batman, of all people, being scared of the Kents, Superman, he could understand since they were his parents. Batman just had him cackle a little. A quick glance up let him see the full moon hanging over the city. Despite the currently clear sky, there was a noticeable rumble of thunder in the distance, and they could see the approaching storm clouds. Typical Gotham night? Izuku asked. He was currently wearing a black jumpsuit with a bandana concealing his hair. Putting it mildly. Nightwing replied, sighing a little at the prospect of getting soaked, again. From the roof they were using as a vantage spot, he looked out over the dual row of apartments. It looked quiet, but it was Gotham, that could change fast. All right. This is the Fidelheit Arms apartment complex. At worst, we should just find your usual two-bit thug or crook. A quick jog across the roof and we'll be. Nightwing? Izuku spoke up. I think we have company. The former sidekick spun around. What do you dash? He started to ask, only to see a familiar woman wrapping her arms around the boy. The leather outfit she had on hugging her curves. Catwoman. Long time no see, Nighty. She said casually, pressing her chest against Izuku's head a little. Not quite one of your usual hunting spots. He replied. Well, I spied you two a few blocks back and couldn't resist saying hello to the League's newest morsel. She purred, gently pulling the greenette's head in between her breasts for a reverse marshmallow. Ah, he is adorable. Hello, Miss Kyle, I am mean Catwoman. He stammered, trying to ignore the soft mounds squished against his noggin. Huh, so Jinxie wasn't pulling my tail. Nightwing looked at her. Jinx? I ran into her the other day. She'd mentioned how her and Raven's new boyfriend had gotten your attention and was made a member. Her voice dropped to a husky whisper. You must be quite the Superman to be able to handle two Supergirls at once. As well as rock their worlds. And gunning for a third already? Selina, come on. Nightwing muttered. We got a patrol to get to. Oh, don't be such a spoilsport, Nighty. She replied, pulling Izuku closer against her. You wouldn't happen to be interested in an older woman, would you? Older? Izuku managed to get out. A quick glance to either side revealed her suit was unzipped, giving him an inside view of her cleavage. She shook for a second before letting out a fit of giggles and letting him go. Don't worry, kiddo. I'm just messing with. Talk to Raven and Jinx and we'll see. He replied, almost on reflex. Both Nightwing and Catwoman looked at him in surprise, until she laughed even louder. Oh, I like him. She grinned. All right, Selina, why are you really here? Nightwing asked. There's no way you follow us all this way just to get him flustered. True, that was the bonus. Catwoman got a little more serious. I got wind that Harley and Ivy are planning something, so you might want to be on your toes. Harley. As in Harley Quinn? Izuku blanched a little. But isn't she Joker's second in command? I thought Poison Ivy hated him. Former second. Nightwing corrected him. She and the clown had a falling out a while back. Now you barely see her or Ivy without the other around. Definite improvement in company. She commented. Ivy may prefer plants to people, but she's a lot more human than that giggly psycho. Before either could respond, every building within a 3-block radius suddenly went black. Speak of the thorn bush. Catwoman said. Normally I'd offer to come along, but Isis had her kittens and I can't leave them alone too long. Later, boys. She sent a wink Izuku's way before swinging off. She always like that? Izuku asked. He'd considered having Izuku wait for him, but Nightwing was wary about leaving him alone in his city he'd been to before. Not to mention the risk of him being found by one of the local lunatics. Thankfully, Oracle was already tracking the radiating outages and led them to the West Gotham power plant. Even as they neared it, they could see it was suffering structural damage. A large hole had been ripped in the wall, and they could hear the sounds of crushing metal and concrete inside. You think this could be them? Izuku asked as they landed on the roof of the plant. Yeah, Bane, Hatter, and Two-Face are still Arkham. Riddle's ego wouldn't let him do something like this without sending Batman one of his puzzles, and no laughing or ice, so that leaves Dash. Unfortunately, the damage done to the building was more than they saw. A sudden cracking sound caught their attention. What was that? Izuku asked. Right before the section of roof he was standing on gave out from under him. Izuku! Nightwing yelled, seeing him plummet into the plant interior. Meanwhile, Harley Quinn and Poison Ivy were watching one of the botanist's newest creations latch its fangs onto the turbines. Eat hearty, big guy. Harley called out, sitting beside Ivy on a large leaf from the plant monster. Once we've drained this thing dry, Gotham will have no choice but to pay up if it wants its precious electricity back. Ivy smirked. Incoming. Was that you? The villains asked each other, only to get their answer in the form of a green-haired boy landing in Harley's lap. Hi. He said nervously. Ivy raised a brow his way. Where'd you come from? Oh, Red, he's adorable. Harley squealed, hugging him like he was a plush toy. Can we keep him? Please. Wait. Izuku jumped in before she could reply, pointing at the modified vegetation. Are those plants biologically channeling electricity? With bioelectric generators and storage units? He looked at them, all trace of fear gone. Do you know how much governments would pay to have access to a renewable power supply they could literally grow in their garden? I mean, why the heck are you trying to steal power? Say what? Ivy asked, a tad dumbfounded. Just plug these guys into the power grid and sell the electricity. Most of the other kinds of power would start to go bankrupt within a month, especially the coal and nuclear plants. Not to mention the scientists will be beating down your door to get more planted across the world. Harley and Ivy both stunned glances at that bit of info. Sorry, I got kinda excited. I never really thought of that, but the kid's got a point, Red. Green energy is a huge fad in science circles. The only thing really blocking it taking off is the bottom line for businesses. Ivy hummed a little, lightly fingering her lip. True. Beating them at their own game would be delicious karma. And the idea of going fully legit is appealing. In that case. She slid her arms around him, both her and Harley's breasts pressing against him. Yes, we can keep him. You should probably talk to Jinx and Raven about that first. They said they didn't mind sharing, but I don't think they'll put up with someone trying to steal me away from them. Harley gave him a closer look. Wait, you're that kid? Her eyes widened. The one Batsy made a league member 'cause he was a security risk otherwise? The one that's got every super female between 15 and 25 fighting to get in his pants? Yes, Dr. Quinn, that's me, I guess. I am not sure about that last part, though. He gulped when he felt one of Quinn's hands shift a bit. Dr. Iselli, could you please restrain your partner? She's making me nervous. Down, Girl Ivy said, seeing Harley was giving him an appraising look. Come on, Red. Admit it, you're a little curious about how he managed to pull that off as well. Though, best guess, it ain't no police baton he's got down there. Ivy followed Harley's gaze to his crotch. What's that term they use in Japanese comics? Yeah, era. On the roof, Nightwing could only stare down at what he'd just seen. Izuku had successfully defused the terrorist activities, had one of the villains in question rethinking how she should go about things, and was now being marshmallowed by the both of them as a thank you. All he could really do there was facepalm as he slowly took out his communicator. Nightwing to Batman, I don't know whether to pity or envy Izuku. The Caped Crusader didn't miss a beat. Who is it this time? Catwoman, Harley, and Poison Ivy in one night. Batman was briefly silent, until maybe Flash's theory isn't that out there after all. Theory? Both of Izuku's parents have quirks. His father can generate fire, and his mother can attract objects to her, albeit small ones. Given that quirks can be unusual in how they get passed on, especially when two quirks mix. Flash thinks Izuku has a quirk for attracting hot things? He was quiet again. Yes. Tell Flash I'm putting $50 on at least 12. Explain. Come on, Bruce. You can't tell me Flash hasn't started a pool on how big Izuku's harem is going to get if that's his theory. And Plastic Man's probably helping. My money's on 20. Don't. Tell. Superman. We'll already be at 6 once Kara finally gets hold of him. My ears. The bald-headed boy shrieked. It's happening again. Dude, you should probably get that looked at. 9 to go. Izuku said to himself, looking at the calendar. In just under 9 months, he'd be participating in the U.A high entrance exam. He wasn't too sure what to expect, but his time in the league so far had him almost eager to see what they'd have. A quick glance in the mirror had him chuckle a little. Whoever said a lot can happen in whatever amount of time wasn't kidding. The Deku had long since faded, in his place was something that was a stark contrast. The browbeaten appearance and socially awkward air replaced with a calm, confident demeanor. Along with the mental and emotional change, the training had done a number on the scrawny frame he used to have. It wasn't a lot yet, but he could feel it. He laughed again and did a less than serious flex. He'd just gotten a bicep to form when he saw his door open in the reflection and a familiar blonde step in. "Oh, hey Kara," he said, noticing she was wrapped up in her cape. "Jinx said you'd be over." "What's that?" She didn't respond, except to do a rather cute lip bite before setting down what looked like a plasma ball, except it had something inside it resembling two gyroscopes fused together and made out of red crystal. He watched her press down on the top, and it began glowing, casting a red hue over them. It was then that he noticed she wasn't wearing boots. "Clark? What's wrong with you?" Batman asked, seeing the man stop dead and shudder a little. I just got the feeling I'm going to have to explain something to my parents." His voice filled with dread. "And I really don't want to." "John, did you feel that?" Martha Kent asked, looking around. "It wasn't an earthquake, was it?" I don't think so, dear." John scratched his thinning hairline. "But, for some reason I feel like I should be happy for Kara for some reason." "You and me both. I know you explained about that Amazon beam, Tashinori," Recovery Girl said, removing her stethoscope and giving him his usual checkup, "but I still barely believe it, and the proof is right in front of me. You've already managed to regain about 11% of your old muscle mass." "I know." He leaned back in his chair. "I still have to pinch myself on occasion to make sure I'm awake." He stopped and looked up. "Ha! Something wrong?" "Nope. Dunno why, but here's to you, Midoriya." He called out, procuring a bottle of sake from somewhere and taking a deep swig. "Tashinori, I didn't know you drank." Recovery Girl said, looking shocked. "Nope, tolerance I zero alcohol have." He blurted out, right before passing out, and sliding off the chair in a snoring heap. Back in Izuku's room, about a half hour later, a tired, grinning and naked Izuku and Kara lay on his bed. Kara's hair was splayed out around her and she ran a finger over the hickey the synthetic red sunlight had let him put on her shoulder. "Het, you sure you're not part Kryptonian?" The two shared a brief laugh, and she curled up against him. "Won't Superman be kind of upset about?" He started, only for her to wave it off. "Clark knows I can take care of myself." Truth be told, he was more worried about me accidentally putting you in the hospital. That, and while he'll meet the likes of Metallo, Darkseid, and Atrocitus head-on, the idea of telling Ma and Pa that their niece has the hots for a boy makes him nervous. Nervous? Superman? He blinked, not really expecting those two words to be used. Wait, you said Ma and Pa, as in his parents? Let me deal with it. Knowing Pa, he'll probably just be glad I found a boy who's not intimidated at me being able to bench press in the multi-ton range. Can't decide if I should be impressed or jealous of that. He added. Or both. Indeed, they both let him know neither appreciated him shooting their boyfriend. Last I heard, the paramedics were stuck between trying to undo the knot his arms were in, and laughing themselves sick at the two mop heads wedged in his colon. The other end was quiet, until he heard a muffled wheeze and snort. Batman quickly cleared his throat. How is he? It didn't go in too deep, but managed to leave a decent gash, so he was brought in to get any pieces of bullet that might have gotten left in it. Soon as he heard that, a thought hit Batman. Something that made his blood briefly go cold, while Izuku had managed to perform an act he'd never even considered, and he was still kicking himself for it and showing Poison Ivy how she could get out of the criminal business. Last he checked, she was taking it seriously, even given him the notes and materials to some of her more violent projects for disposal. Despite that, he was still human, a teen, and still in training. Not to mention the fact that word might get out about that, and he could find himself with a target on him. His gaze hardened at the thought. Well, I must say, you are a very fortunate young man. The doctor said, while Raven helped Izuku get a new shirt on. The bullet skipped off the bone at a shallow enough angle to do only superficial damage to the bone. That's a relief, he said, grunting a little as he got his left arm in the sleeve. It should heal up in a few days at most. Although, you will be rather sore, and I recommend against doing any excessive physical activity until then. Don't worry, document. Jinx said, putting her arms around him gently, Raven following suit. We'll make sure he follows instructions. As the three left the hospital, Izuku glanced at them. Wait, if the wound's that minor, and Raven said she knows healing dash. Jinx cut him off. 'Cause we want to know which one of us you think looks best in a nurse outfit, and nursing you back to health while you're injured is the only way they'll stay on long enough for you to really choose. Jinx. Raven's cheeks turned bright pink. What? Jinx was unrepentant. A slightly goofy grin crossed his face. Can't argue with that logic. Lucius. Batman said, entering his CEO's workshop/personal lab. Evening, boss. The inventor spoke up, eyes never leaving the plasma cutter he was currently operating. I take it you're here about the armor you requested for the League's new member. He pointed a thumb at a nearby table. Following the gesture, Batman walked over and looked at the pieces resting there. Molded to resemble bracers, shin guards, greaves, and cuirass, they were the color of cast iron, but proved to be surprisingly light when he picked one up. Used the same material you and your boys have. Lucius said, once he'd finished. Getting up, he promptly joined his employer at the table. Titanium thread interwoven with carbon fiber mesh. I don't know what Mr. Midoriya's exact measurements are, so I used Robin's since they have a similar height and build. How far along are you so far? The actual suit itself will be ready in a couple of days. However, it's just in the prototype stage, since you said he'll have final say on certain components. He's still recovering from the gunshot, so you'll have time. Never thought I'd say this, but I love my life. Izuku thought, mentally dancing while he lay in bed, with all three of his girls cuddling him. And all three in nurse outfits of varying skimpiness. Raven's was the most conservative, a tight-fitting black uniform with white thigh-high stockings, and a skirt that barely covered her backside. She was at his side, holding his head against her chest. Karis was similar, but light blue, with a slightly shorter skirt and a large heart cut out in the front, showing off a considerable amount of cleavage. She was cuddling him from behind. Jinx was currently straddling his lap, though her outfit was more of a pink bikini with a nurse cap. All three were holding him tight. Well, his pulse is good, so I believe he'll live. Raven smirked. Izuku just let out a mumbled laugh from between her breasts. Beast Boy looked up at the clock. So, any idea when it's supposed to get here? He asked. The Titans had notified by John to expect a delivery sometime that day. With no alerts or sights of any villains, waiting for it was pretty much all they were doing at the moment. Robin shook his head. No idea. All I know is that he said it's a prototype Bruce and his gear developer were working on. Maybe it's some kind of new computer and he wants to try and break it. Cyborg, who'd been nodding off, quickly perked up hearing that. Ooh, I got this bootleg copy of Thunder Runners for that's got so much malware, it bricked 2 of my good hard drives. If it can survive that. He was cut off when one of the watchtower's boom tubes appeared, depositing a large cylindrical container, about the size of a human, and a small computer touchscreen was on it along with a keypad. Hang on, this is one of Batman's transport pods. The kind he uses to get suits and gear to himself and others in the field. Robin said, spying a notice on the screen. He tapped it and a message started playing in Bruce's voice. Since Robin would recognize the pod, then the package has arrived if you're reading this. The group listened to the recording, Izuku's eyes widening a little. Armor? He asked. Looks like it. Robin started typing in the combination in to unlock it. After Joker shot Barbara, he was Adam and Dick and I get extra reinforcement in our gear. He rapped his knuckles on his chest so they could hear a slightly muffled thump under the fabric. Guess he decided to extend that to you. Hitting the last key caused the seal to crack open with a loud hiss, followed by the front half sliding apart to reveal the contents. Dood. Beast Boy whistled. That's just a prototype. Izuku stared at what lay before him. Aside from it lacking a helmet and vest, it looked more like something a SWAT member would wear. Any other comments were silent when Raven suddenly used her magic to pull it out and into Cyborg's field of view. Upgrades. Now. Yes, ma'am. He answered without hesitation. Wow, that was kinda fast, sigh. Beast Boy said, watching him gather up the suit and everything else that was in the pod. Hey, I may much be a fan of M, but I've played my share of RPGs, and Raven's the only one who knows any healing magic. And you don't piss off the white mage. Robin added. No, you do not. Izuku faltered. What? He'd been half expecting her to be some crazed stalker or criminal and start fighting back, or at least try to bite him. What are you talking about? Not this. My quirk, everyone says it's evil, so I have to be normal, she replied. He stared. What? There's no such thing as an evil quirk. I mean, there are some that can be used for evil easier than others, but every quirk has that potential. That's the dumbest. The only thing stupider is saying you're automatically evil because of it. He quickly got off her and grabbed onto the top of a nearby fire hydrant to steady himself. What kind of idiot told you that? My parents' dash, she was cut off by the loud crack of metal breaking as the hydrant's bonnet shattered in his grip, and bent the operating nut slightly. Come again? The calm tone he now had was icy. Before he could say anything else, though, John's hand settled on his arm. Zig, calm down. I heard it as well, but right now, though, we need to handle the situation at hand. Martian Manhunter. They both looked at the blonde. Holy crap, you're actually here. The boys that were fighting had already ran off, leaving just the three of them, so John decided to get to the point. The boys. Why did you attack them? She sighed, taking on a somewhat dreamy attitude. The blood, so beautiful. I know my parents and counselor keep demanding I be normal, to stop using my evil quirk, but I couldn't help it. Just seeing that wonderful red, it sang to me. John. Izuku looked at him. Something's very wrong here. The alien hero nodded. I agree, despite how some quirks have a higher potential to be used for criminal activity, there's no such thing as an evil one. Also, she's not behaving like a criminal either. Yeah, you can't just tell someone to stop using their quirk. It doesn't work like that. I say we bring her with us, there's way more here than we're seeing. As the saying went, news traveled quick. It didn't take long before the boys there had informed Toga's parents. They'd learned her name was Himiko, who reacted surprisingly quick. By the time John and Izuku got the okay to bring her aboard the watchtower and situated somewhat, they were already having a press release. What's wrong, Izuku? Batman asked, seeing the boy looking out through one of the watchtower's windows. He looked calm, but Bruce could see his knuckles turning white from the grip he had on the rail. You saw the press statement, right? From Himiko's parents? He spat the word out like it was the vilest slur out there. I saw. Anger briefly tinged his voice before shifting to a softer tone. You handled extracting her quite well. John is already working to give her counseling. He motioned over to a solitary table where the two were sitting. Izuku looked at him. Bruce, it would be bad to take them to task, right? Depends on what you have in mind. Tell me I shouldn't, please. His grip tightened even more, causing his knuckles to audibly pop. I'm afraid of what I might do if I did. Bruce gently set a hand on his shoulder. That's reason enough not to. You should never go into a situation where you doubt your self-control, at least not alone. That's something all of us have had to go through at least once. Make sure anyone you bring with you is strong enough to hold you back, as well as calm and in control enough to not egg you on. Izuku sighed. Right. It's just... He looked over to see John calmly talking to Toga. The hand lightly resting on her head showed he was conversing mentally as well as physically. She nodded slightly before a few tears ran down her cheek. I know exactly how you feel. Not the only one, either. Hearing that, he glanced about, and Batman could hear his mumbling. If you're doing a head count, only Flash and Zatara are missing. Oh. Where are they? Don't worry, they have excellent self-control, and both of them can be pretty creative in blowing off steam without being noticed, or leaving collateral damage. Oh. Good to know. He winced a little when he forced himself to let go of the rail, his knuckles cracking louder on extension. Bruce. John's voice echoed in the man's head. How is she? Not too well. Quirk suppression is taking its toll on her. Batman's eyes narrowed. Suppression? Her quirk allows her to copy the physical appearance of people. However, it requires her to consume the blood of the person. It also gave her a fascination with it. Because of this, her family made her stop using it and be normal, claiming it was evil, and therefore she was evil for using it. Didn't they get her help? Someone who could teach her to use it properly? Bruce found it hard to imagine and not even trying to help their child. John snorted mentally. The so-called counselor they sent her to did nothing but tell her to be normal as well. How long? His tone hardened. He was thoroughly tempted to lay into those people, rules be damned. Almost 10 years, long enough for her quirk to start to adapt, and not in a good way. The uncharacteristic anger in Manhunter's voice actually managed to give Bruce pause. After being fought against for so long, it's starting to cause a psychological demand for blood. As well as the mental and emotional strain just from the resisting itself. What can we do to help her? John made eye contact with Izuku and gestured for him to come over, slowly stepping back as he got near. We've already started, thankfully. Hey. Izuku edged a little closer to the still crying girl. I'm sorry about Dash, he didn't much word in after that. The moment Himiko realized he was there, she latched into him like he was a teddy bear. I don't want to be a bad girl, honest. She got out between sobs. But when I saw his blood, I couldn't control it anymore. It's going to be okay. He said softly, gently putting his arms around her. We're going to help you. I promise. A shriek rent the evening air in downtown Gotham. The scream for help echoed slight from the lone alley. Those few that heard it thought a mugger, or potentially worse, had found their latest victim. They were half right, a victim had been found, but the mugger that was currently being dragged into the darker end of the alley by a grappling line wasn't really being pitted by the couple he'd tried to jump a few seconds ago. Mommy. He was quickly silenced an armored elbow to the face, courtesy of Izuku. That's what, the third mugger so far? He asked while Robin cuffed him. Yeah, I recognize this one. Think he used to work for Riddler a while back. He rolled his eyes. They never learn. The two carted their latest catch to a spot where the police would find him easily. How'd the toe claw handle? Pretty good. He held up his left forearm, where a small section rose up to reveal a three-pronged grasper. Cyborg said it's got a 600-pound hold, long as I can keep my feet planted. We reeled him in like a panicking fish. Robin snorted in amusement at that. Come on, we still got a couple of hours before Batman and Nightwing arrive for their shift. The duo quickly grappled up to the nearest rooftop and cut across to the other side of the block. As they did, Izuku spied something out of the corner of his eye. For a second, he thought he saw a flicker of green vanish around a water tower across the street. What was that? What? Robin followed his gaze. Dunno, could swear I saw something over on the roof over there. He glanced around. You don't think we're being followed, do you? Doubt it, most of the crooks that aren't still in Arkham would have tried to spring a trap by now. Last I heard, Deadshot's still recovering after his run-in with Etrigan, and Deathstroke managed to get on the League of Shadows' bad side somehow. Robin glanced back over to the roof. Either way, we should probably keep an eye out. The two continued their patrol across town. After catching a lady trying to pick the lock on a rooftop door, things were looking to settle down. Until they decided to swing across to a local shopping mall. Don't think I'll ever get over the rush from doing dash. Hi, Zuzu. Izuku was cut off by a glump from one Harley Quinn, the impact taking him out of his swing and sending them both into an oddly convenient bounce castle. Harley. Robin heard him yelp from inside. What are you? Wow, are those really shorts you have on? Like Red and I got the all clear from your other girls, so I thought I'd dress for the occasion. Harley chirped, followed by her voice taking on a purr. Now, how about getting out of that armor so we can get acquainted? It's moments like this that make me happy to be dating just one girl. Robin thought, heading to the shaking structure. As much as I'd like to leave you two alone, we've got a patrol to finish. Robin stared a little at what he saw inside. Harley was straddling a prone Izuku, wearing a green and white jacket and green short shorts. The jacket was quickly shed, showing off the green and white halter top she had on. Don't worry, I just need an hour, or 3. She replied, pulling the top up and patting Izuku down. Now where's the off switch for this thing? Harley, no wonder you wore that skin-tight bodysuit. Mentally, he was somewhat glad he was in rigid armor at the moment. Tell me how to get you out of this can and you'll be doing way more than looking, cutie. You realize you still have your meeting with Toga later, Izuku. Remember? Robin said, having quickly put his back to the scene. Huh? Who's Toga? Harley looked back at him. It's kind of a long story. Izuku said. He quickly told her about his encounter with Himiko a few days ago, along with her now former parents' disownment of her. They did what? Harley blurted out, unable to believe what she'd just heard. Those Maroons were more worried about their stinkin' image instead of trying to actually help her get a hold on her ability. She sat there for a second, looking almost emotionless, before speaking back up. Care to repeat that? Batman's voice came back over the comlink, doing his best to not sound confused. Harley wants to come up to the watchtower to talk to Himiko. Izuku said. And yes, she's very much aware that she'll be in the JL's home territory. And around at least a dozen beings who can easily fold her like a pair of glasses. Look, Bats. Harley cut in, leaning over Izuku's shoulder. I know you and I ain't exactly thick as thieves yet, but I'm a quarter naked at the moment. You know I have a PhD in psychology, and hearing about what the kid went through kinda reminds me of how eager I was to try and get Joker's approval, despite how much it felt like a lost cause. And what exactly do you mean by 1/4 naked? Batman asked, wondering about what kind of weapon and or gear she'd be able to hide in her current outfit. Well, I'm going commando. Very glad I'm wearing armor. Izuku mumbled. Not quite what I meant, but... Batman sighed. Fine, John, I know you can hear this. Locking onto their location already. Manhunter replied. Woo! Harley latched onto Izuku as she stumbled from the teleportation. That tingled. Yeah, I'm still getting used to it. Izuku said, placing a hand on his chest where a sigil started glowing, followed by the armor dematerializing, leaving him in street clothes. Izuku! Squealed Himiko as she came running up full tilt. The moment she was close enough, she flew into him with a high-speed glomp that took him off his feet. Harley had to jump out of the way when she saw her take off. Hey, Himi oof. He grunted when she tackled him. Nice distance. Harley looked at the spot she'd jumped from. John quietly walked up beside her. Izuku's more or less the first to actually be angry at how she was treated, so she sort of latched onto him as a source of comfort. Think we can safely say the tally's gone up to 7. He added mentally, watching the girl hug Izuku tightly. NCE they were presentable. Izuku reformed his armor and left to resume patrol. However, he barely made it to another roof when the feeling of being followed came back. As if to confirm his suspicions, his audio booster caught the approaching rustle of fabric and he wheeled around in time to see Cheshire Len nearby. "Decided to pop up for real, huh?" he asked, noting she didn't seem to be taking an aggressive stance. "I'm guessing you haven't been following me just from curiosity." Cheshire just stood there, her expression unreadable thanks to the mask she had on. Her head briefly tilted to the side before he saw something slip into her hands. And she moved. Izuku barely had time to raise an arm up on reflex as the object unfolded into a fan edged with metal. It struck his forearm with a resounding clank. The armor kept him from injury, but there was enough force in the hit for him to feel the impact. Whoa! The heck? He jumped back when she drew another edged fan, this one scraping across his chest. "What's your problem, lady?" A glance at his arm showed there wasn't any damage, though he had no clue just how strong his armor really was. Cheshire, however, remained silent as she pressed the attack, swiping at Izuku with the fans from nearly every angle, forcing him into defensive measures. The air was filled with the echoing ring of metal striking metal. Whoever said stronger than they look wasn't kidding with her. He thought, deflecting an overhand strike, only to have the other rake his visor. "Hey! Alright, that's it." Knocking away another strike, he quickly drew his tonfas. "Time to apply one of Batman's bigger lessons. You're pulling to the left some, Midoriya." Batman noted, watching him spar with Supergirl. "Straighten your shoulder a bit." "Huh? Oh, right." Pulling a bit, he moved in for a hit. Unfortunately, he straightened his arm a little too much. When Kara moved to deflect his hand, it slipped farther than she meant. And landed palm first on her breast. "Whoops." Kara muttered, looking down at the hand. He stared in abject shock, face turning redder by the second, his hand squeezing slightly in reflex. Oh crud." Batman quickly brought him out of it. "Midoriya, don't think about that. Remember, your opponent's gender is a non-issue. The only thing to really concern yourself with is how dangerous they are." "I don't know what your problem is, Cheshire." He forced her to jump back from a swing of his tonfa, "but if you want to fight, you got it." The ring of colliding metal increased in intensity as Tessin and tonfa collided. Now that he had a better way to counter, Izuku quickly went on the offensive. "Gotta be careful, she's only been using those fans so far." He thought, well aware that the speed she took out that group with meant she was a lot more experienced than him. That bit of knowledge quickly raised a concern. Then, if she's intent on attacking, why isn't she using more than just the Tessin? He winced a little at the high-pitched metallic scrape as their weapons clanged off each other before getting lucky and pinning one of her fan between his tonfa. "Ha!" He finally managed to get a closer look at it. The design was a grinning cat's face similar to her mask, but there was something off about the blade. "This fan's got metal on it, but I can't see any sharp spots. The whole thing looks..." It was then that his visor highlighted it, along with a readout. Analysis, blade sharpness, 0%. Cutting lethality, none. "You're attacking me with blunt Tessin." He blurted out as she pulled away, leaving the snagged fan with him. "The hell? Took you long enough to spot it," she said, her voice muffled slightly from the mask. "Well, it's kind of hard to see it when you're coming at me like a blender with them," he retorted. "What's the deal? Gonna have to be a little more specific, Zuzu," she replied, using an oddly teasing tone as she walked around him. She just reached his side when she dashed in with another strike from the fan she still had. Izuku reacted by deflecting it over his tonfa, although that left the other fan free for her to retrieve. Using it to deliver a pair of backhand swings he was able to counter, she quickly ducked out of the way of a couple of retaliatory punches with his tonfa before jumping away. "Attacking me with blunt Tessin, that deal. You know, a little of this, a little of that." "That's not an answer," he muttered. What's wrong, Zuzu?" she asked, a near hint of mockery in her voice. "Don't like wordplay?" She flipped aside to avoid his grappler when he shot it. And that's not wordplay. Izuku was starting to get annoyed with her. Now are you going to answer or what? Damn it. He had to knock away one of the fans when she flung it at him. Didn't even know those things were throw Abe. But I did answer. Izuku could practically feel the girl's smug grin behind that mask. I mean a straight answer, you vexing feline. Then maybe you should ask a straight question. I did. He growled. Really? I didn't hear Dash. A scream of anger told Cheshire she may have pushed his buttons a little too much. The resulting tackle confirmed it as she quickly found herself pinned under an irate Izuku. For the last time, what do you want with me? He half yelled, visor tapping against mask. Now that I can answer. She replied, her voice suddenly devoid of its former taunting tone. Izuku started to respond when she suddenly wrapped her leg around him, her foot rubbing along his back and pulling him closer. A light, and rather sultry, giggle escaped her as she moved her mask aside just enough to show half her face. To see if you can make this cute kitty purr. What? His visor slowly disengaged and lifted, as if in reaction to him trying to make sure he wasn't hearing things. As he did, an unexpected, albeit familiar sensation was hitting him, downstairs. His eyes widened when he realized exactly what it was. Raven, what all did you and Jinx put in this suit? Are you going, commando? Maybe. She purred, grinding against him. I have a... He trailed off when his visor lowered back down, this time with a pair of messages. Go got it, babe. J, break her, Zuzu. 3. K, what Jinx said. Tongue sticking out. He stared at the messages. My luck cannot possibly be this odd. Cyborg blinked. In his time with the Titans, he'd encountered a lot of stuff that had him do double takes, the so-called amazing mumbo, that loony Brit mad mod, tofu aliens, even the fact that his teammate Raven had a power-hungry interdimensional demon as a papa. Now he could add seeing the assassin/mercenary Cheshire coming out of their shower, drying her hair, to that list. And wearing a shirt he knew belonged to Izuku. His jaw slackened when he saw her maskless for the first time. Lime green eyes and full pink lips with a dark caramel skin tone, he didn't need his internal computer to tell she was a hottie. Though, there was still the fact she was there, inside Titan Tower, and currently half naked. His jaw clanked to the floor. Ohin? He called out, scooping up his disconnected mandible. Ohhin. He quickly took off when she looked his way. Ohhin. Ohhin. Robin looked up from his book. Wah? Ohin. Ezra shr. He gave his teammate a less than enthused look. Cyborg, put your mouth back together. You're drooling. There was a loud squeak and clank as Cyborg forced his jaw back into place. CH Cheshire's here. In the tower. Oh, finally out of the shower? He asked, making the larger Titan nearly faceplant in shock. Hope they didn't use all the hot water up, I'd like to get one myself. Use up, Robin. Cheshire. Here. Inside Titan Tower. Cyborg flailed his arms. Raven and Jinx. The boy wonder replied, glancing over to see Izuku come around the corner, wearing a towel and goofy smile. He shrugged when Cheshire glumped the greenette for a searing kiss, wrapping her arms and legs around him in the process. The shirt was low enough to expose just her legs, but the slight flutter, coupled with the way it bunched as Izuku was forced to grip the girl's rear to hold her up, told them the shirt was all she had on. For the second time that day, Cyborg's jaw bounced off the floor as Jinx made her appearance, grinning while she gave Cheshire's rear a squeeze herself. Just remember, Jade. Gotta share. Turned out Jade Nguyen's her real name. Robin said, answering the shocked look. There was another metallic squeak/clank, followed by two loud thuds. Teach me your ways, Great One. Cyborg cried out, genuflecting at Izuku's feet. Sorry, sigh. Jinx said teasingly, cuddling up to him with their new addition. But you'll never be as adorable as Zuzu here. Naya. Beast Boy's head titled slowly in a mix of confusion and mild horror. Cyborg. He stared at the metal cat ears and tail his friend now wore. That's disturbing. Naya, I mean, you do it all the time. Cyborg protested, sitting with a power hand up. But I can turn into an actual cat. What's the difference? All right, kitty cat, spill. Kara said once the girlfriend quartet, plus Starfire, were gathered in Raven's room. How was he? Jinx was quick to chime in. Yeah, we saw our boy carrying you in and straight into the shower. Well, that rooftop was a little dusty. Jade replied, still clad in the shirt. Rooftop? Kinky. She leaned in. Go on. And don't forget the details. Jade's grin matched her mask. Never thought Gotham would actually have a crimeless night. Izuku muttered, peering into an alleyway before hopping to the next roof. You almost sound disappointed, Izuku. John's voice piped up from the armor's comm system. Batman usually sees it as peaceful when your standard thugs and hoodlums are all he runs across. Surprised, more like it. He replied. Maybe this time I'll get to finish a solo patrol in a way you're normally meant to finish it. Making sure that what looked like someone breaking into a shop's back door was just them closing up, he grappled up into a nearby fire escape. I don't know, it seems like a refreshing change of pace considering. Seriously, John? There was a measure of disbelief in Izuku's voice. While he wasn't really aggravated by the who, it was the how that made him sigh. His encounter from last week was a testimony to that. Aside from the kinda dreary feel. Gotham seems serene when the sun's out. Izuku said, following Robin across an empty parking lot during one of their rare daytime patrols. Yeah, I've always wondered why guys like Penguin and Riddler never try stuff then. He shrugged. Maybe they've just gotten into the habit. And possibly because guys like Plastic Man and Green Arrow offer to fill in during those times too. At least it doesn't seem like we'll get any. Izuku trailed off as a huge, gray, hulk of a man came lumbering from around a corner. He was wearing suspendered pinstripe trousers with a graying wife-beater shirt. However, it was the 3 knives protruding from his back, as well as the noose hanging around his neck like a morbid tie that had his attention. Solomon Grundy. I thought he never came out in the daylight. Not without good reason, anyway. Robin replied, both boys taking a step back. He knew that neither of them were a match for the dead man in a straight-on fight. Hopefully that wasn't the case this time. Hearing them, Grundy turned their way and gave a low growl of acknowledgement. Grundy, find you finally. He said in his rasping bass tone. Find, he's been looking for us? Robin asked, wondering what the hell they'd done to get his attention. Grundy just shook his head and pointed at Izuku. Harley Quinn asked Grundy. Harley? Why hey. Before either could react, the dead man had quietly picked Izuku up and started walking away. Robin facepalmed. She couldn't have just called? Grundy, can't you wait till after we've finished our patrol? Harley Quinn give Grundy good bourbon. Grundy keep his side of deal. Izuku groaned. Wonder if all my patrols are gonna end like this. Ivy pinched the bridge of her nose when Grundy arrived, setting Izuku down as soon as they were both inside her and Harley's house. Solomon, you were just supposed to deliver the message. Please tell me you at least told him something before carting him off. She spied Izuku's armor, and during his patrol. He said something about being sent by Harley, and mentioning about the bourbon she gave him as payment. Izuku stumbled a little, regaining his bearings. Yeah. She blushed a little. We managed to get a couple barrels of 30-year-old Kentucky bourbon in trade for one of my smaller power plants. I'm more of a wine girl and Harley's beer only. So? She shrugged. Who knew the dead man loved the stuff? Yeah, so, what's this message Harley had for me? Actually, I sent it. On her behalf. Izuku looked at her, letting his armor drop. Okay, I'll bite. Why? Remember what I said about me and her sharing? Oh. But my patrol dash. Robin just told us what happened. Raven spoke up over his comlink. Babe, wreck her. I second that. Cheshire joined in, say, have any of your lovers asked for anal yet? A penis as large as yours would make it quite interesting. Ivy fought the urge to giggle at the look on his face hearing that. Anyway, I think Harley's in her bedroom playing with that new game system she'd gotten. She leaned in and kissed him. Do her good and hard, babe. I want to hear her squeal. Lemon lemon naughty time. It had taken a while for him to shake off the blush from her praise/bragging, especially when he caught Ivy just outside the door. She definitely enjoyed what she heard if the way she was fingering herself had been any indication. Not that I'm complaining. He thought, working his way around a billboard. Just a standard patrol would be a change of pace. Horn cannon. The scream, followed by a snarling shout, made him whirl around in time to see something ricochet off the wall in a back alley a couple of buildings over. Looks like Murphy heard me. John, something's up nearby. I'm gonna check it out. Be ready in case I need backup. Understood. Be careful, Izuku. Stained teeth bared, the mottled, scaly form of Killer Croc hissed menacingly. Too beady, pale eyes focused almost unblinkingly on his newest target, a small blonde girl with two long, lyre-shaped horns sticking up from her head. Additional equine-ish features called out even more to her meta-human status. R. End of the road, squirt. Don't worry, I'll be quick, you helped me work up an appetite. The girl, better known as Pony Tsunetori, backed up, shaking from head to toe. Part of her wondered if she should have picked Metropolis instead for her pre-trip vacation. Despite the fact the U.S. was more lenient in regards to public quirk usage, the schools were rather small-scale, and tended to be attended by those not interested in hero work or had a quirk that worked more effectively in another line of work. Most hero hopefuls would simply enlist with local hero GRPS like the Justice League, Titans, or Birds of Prey. She decided to go ahead and get a license to be safe. This was supposed to be her 2-week-long vacation before packing up to go stay with her aunt in Japan while she attended Udata High. Now though, she'd just been out to buy some items of a personal nature when she'd heard sounds of a scuffle. She hadn't been prepared to see a guy being strangled by some thing over 5 times her size. Or not realizing that it was Killer Croc, the infamous cannibal, until she tried to scare him off with a blast of her horn cannon. One had managed to stab into his side, forcing him to let the man go, who quickly ran off as soon as he was free. Unfortunately, it brought his ire on her. The first thing he said still sent chills down her spine. You just cost me breakfast, girl. Guess who gets to replace it? She tried another volley of horns, but he just knocked them away. Faced with the odds against her, and a look around that showed she'd gotten herself in an alley with no way to get around him, she went with her only option. Running. Except, a hungry and irritated Croc proved to be a very determined predator. Out of fear of what her fate be if he caught her, Pony failed to pay a lot of attention to which way she went, only hoping she could lose him. Finding an alley with only one entrance was the last thing she wanted to see now. Especially when the sound of heavy breathing and a dark laugh sounded behind her. Horn cannon! She screamed, firing another set at him, hoping maybe she'd get a decent hit in. Horn cannon, horn cannon! It was this scene that Izuku was met with once he reached the roof edge. His eyes widened when she snatched up a rusty pipe and hurled it at Croc, who simply caught it in his teeth, and bit the metal in two. Oh man! Oh man! It was rusty, but that was still steel, and he didn't even react. Is my armor even strong enough to handle that? Izzy, you okay? Cyborg's voice popped up over the comm getting a reading that your vitals are going a mile a minute. What's wrong? Killer Croc, he's decided teenage girl is on the menu. Izuku gulped when another pipe was thrown, and bit. I know I gotta do something, but I'm not even sure if my suit'll handle it. He's biting straight through steel pipe. Use the power mode. The what? The girls had a feeling you'd run into something like this, so they added a battle configuration for it, but they forgot to tell you. Just give the command phrase, it's... Seriously. That's the command? Blame Beast Boy. He loves the anime. Just hurry. Knowing he didn't have time to argue about it, Izuku took a deep breath, and vaulted over the edge of the two-story building. Bankai. Pony felt her eyes sting from tears as she realized there wasn't anything big enough left to throw, and she was too drained to use her quirk anymore. No. Alright, time to quit playing around. Feed me. With a roar, Croc lunged, not even bothering to acknowledge the sudden mass of steam and smoke that appeared between them. He couldn't see what was there, but his teeth clamped onto something. Only, it wasn't a little girl, or even flesh. As the cloud cleared, Pony could only stare in surprise at the huge black and green metal thing in front of her. Its back was to her, standing as tall as Croc, but she could see the heavy-looking chest plate and shoulders, making her think of a high-tech knight. The limbs were covered in layered plates, steam wafting from between them, and its forearm was firmly wedged in the killer's mouth. Ayuk! Croc growled, gnawing on the metal in confused anger. I'm sorry, sir, but no shirt, no shoes. The heavy bass voice made Pony's very core vibrate, in a way she oddly enjoyed while watching the other arm draw back. No service. The fist slammed into the jaw, sending a howl of pain and echoed crack of teeth, forcing Killer Croc to let go. Just in time to get a massive metal boot to the chest. Whoa! She jumped when the new guy looked back at her. You alright? He asked, making her shiver a bit. Words failed her and all she could really do was nod. It's okay, I'm Justice League. Name's Zig, the Adamant Knight. He turned back to face Croc, was spitting out a tooth. Now, if you excuse me. I've got lizard butt to stomp. Zig. Croc groaned. You gotta be kidding me. Instead of Batman, I get Captain Pimp. Seriously. Izuku stood there briefly in silence. Right before an engine-like whine echoed from him as he charged straight towards the criminal. Pony Tsunatori then paled while she bore witness to a scene of gratuitous violence that normally required parental supervision. You're reaching the area now, Bruce. John said as Batman came to a screech at the spot he was told Izuku had been last. What the hell is Midoriya thinking? Batman muttered. Facing Killer Croc? Even if he has armor dash. BAAM. He nearly hurled a batarang at the window when a pair of large objects landed on the sidewalk beside the Batmobile, cracking the pavement from the impact. One, a familiar colored metal man, slowly got its feet, revealing what Bruce could swear was Croc. A battered, pummeled, and, if the bizarrely peaceful expression and multiple knots forming on his head were any indication, highly concussed Killer Croc. He was missing more than half his teeth, a few patches of scales looked to have been ripped off, his jaw was apparently dislocated, one eye had swollen shut, and his left leg was in a configuration not meant for human limbs. He slowly got out of the car, watching a girl with gazelle horns run up, asking if he was okay. Zig? Oh. Hey, Batman. Izuku looked at him, his armor scratched up, teeth visibly jammed in a few joints, the visor scraped up and several splotches of crimson on it. Is that? He was ready to get the medical kit out. No, it's Croc's. My fist got jammed in his throat for a second. Listen, this is Pony Tsunatori, could you let her parents know she's okay? Also to call the police to pick this jackass up. He gave a weak kick to the unbroken leg. Pony set a hand on his arm. Yeah. He looked at his foot. I was worried the teeth would get wedged in more if I tried to switch modes. Except Cyborg forgot to mention power mode had a power supply. Best I can do right now is walk. Right. Batman moved to help him. Come on, let's get you out of here in that armor so we can repair it. I'll contact GCPD to collect Croc and reunite Miss Tsunatori with her parents as soon as you're in or on the car. Izuku groaned in frustration as he let the remote fall from his hands. It's spreading. Well, you can't say it's not unearned. Dick started to say from his spot on the sofa until Izuku gave him the stink eye. Perhaps they'll realize it's a moniker made more in jest, Master Midoriya. Alfred said as he entered the room, wearing a mechanic's coat. I recall when Master Dick was Robin, several people thought his hero name really was Boy Wonder. We agreed to never mention that. Dick sing-songed over Izuku snickering. On a more pertinent note, your armor sustained only superficial damage. Unfortunately, neither myself nor Master Bruce know the alloy well enough to attempt any viable restoration. He is currently contacting Raven to see if she and Zatanna can provide assistance. Izuku groaned, remembering how the armor looked once Batman had helped him get out of it. But Raven's gonna kill me. I'm sure the more superficial marks will buff out well, Master Midoriya. He held up a pair of pliers that still had one of Croc's teeth. Possible choice for the collection, Master Dick? No cavities. Besides, she, along with Miss Jinx, commissioned this armor for your protection. She can hardly fault you for it accruing damage while doing its job. That would hardly be rational. Izuku stayed silent, about to facepalm. If this is where a resurgence of your formerly low self-esteem is going to come through with a comment of "she chose me," how rational can she be? Need I remind you that she's far from being the only one to have done so? Also that I have a rolled-up newspaper in my inside jacket pocket for when Ace misbehaves, and your nose is as good a target as his. Yes, sir. Izuku quickly complied. Rough. As if on cue, the jet-black German shepherd looked up from where he was napping and gave Alfred a whining bark of protest. In the Batcave, Bruce brushed off spots where the paint, at least, it looked like paint, had chipped away from where teeth and nails had scratched at the armor. They'd already managed to pry out the teeth. Now it was just making necessary repairs. Although, the damage was surprisingly minimal. Given how strong Croc is, that was saying something. Looking at this, Bruce idly wondered if it could take a blow from someone like Bane. Probably explained how Izuku could sound so calm on the way, despite having just tangled with one of Gotham's more dangerous criminals. John? Could you link me up with my mom? I should probably tell her what happened. Yeah, Batman just picked me up. It's a long story, thanks. Bruce looked up. The Batmobile wasn't soundproofed, and since he was keeping the speed down so Izuku didn't slide off the top, the armor currently made him too big to get inside. He didn't have much. Hey, Mom, I'm okay, all things considering. Well, I kinda got into a fight with Killer Croc, yeah, the cannibal. Well, he was gonna eat a girl. And didn't know if anyone else in the league get there in time. Turns out my armor has a power mode, for when I need to hit hard. Best he did was get a few teeth stuck in the joints, but aside from that, no contest. Say what? No. No, come on, not you too, Mom. I am not Captain Pimp. No, it's not funny. When I get my hands on the guy responsible. Unfortunately, he had to focus back on the road and missed the rest of the conversation. Heh, that name's going to drive him nuts. He chuckled, getting a pair of needle-nose pliers to do a last go-over to get any remaining teeth. He'd just started when he heard a familiar whooshing hum behind him. I'd say I have a door, but... He looked back to see Raven and Jinx step out from the glowing black silhouette. We heard, where is he? Raven said. Upstairs. He's fine, just tired. Croc's the one who got the worst of it. We would have got here sooner, but we had to call Cyborg and Ninny for forgetting to mention the time limit on the power. Jinx added. Tamaranian fuel crystals probably weren't the best choice. Was that or asking for a mini lantern battery? Raven replied, as she checked over a couple of the claw marks. Jerk ruined Izuku's paint job. Azarath Metrian Zinthos. She intoned, having her magic mend the visor before moving to the scratches. This'll take a little while. Sparks flew as a black arc flickered between her fingers and the armor. Need to be sure we don't weaken the metal. Jinx added her own power, making sure the bad luck stayed away. Say, wanna surprise him when we get finished? Clothed or? Well, I am wearing my lucky thong. And this is where I go do something out of earshot. Bruce quickly went to another part of the cave. Izuku tilted his head at the TV show he'd found. Two less than bright-looking guys were beating the tar out of each other with rubber dildos attached to sword handles. Other guys nearby were almost peeing themselves in laughter. Gotham has weird taste in entertainment. He flicked through a couple more channels, hoping to find something less bizarre, until he caught the sound of someone on the stairs. A look back gave him the sight of a girl, looking a year or two older than him, coming down. As she got closer, he was better able to make out the tights and top of the Batgirl uniform she was wearing, the skin-tight material hugging her lithe frame. It took him a second to match name and face. While that happened, she finally spied him, stopping in her tracks. Hi. He waved slightly, seeing she'd noticed he was there. What amounted to any hint of surprise on her face was quickly replaced with curiosity, evident when she tilted her head to the side. You're Cassandra Cain, right? The new Batgirl. I'm Izuku Mido. He faltered when her eyes widened and she moved closer like a cat chasing its prey, pinning him against the couch with an arm on either side of his head. Midoriya. Cassandra leaned in until they were almost nose to nose, breathing in a little deeper than normal. The Batman knows I'm here, if that's the problem. I rode with him, actually. She responded by leaning more, almost nuzzling him, and inhaling deeply against the base of his neck. Izuku went beet red at the action, noticing her chest, while not massive, it was still a respectable size for her frame, pressing up against his. Next thing he knew, she sat in his lap, straddling him. Don't get a boner, you just met her. Don't get a boner, you just met her. Quickly became his new mantra as she began running her hands along some of the scars on his chest. He knew she suffered an even bigger lack of social experience than he ever had, so figured this was just a way she'd worked up to get to know someone new. Raven and the others had to have seen them, but apparently they didn't want to say anything. Izuku shivered a bit as Cassandra slowly traced along one of the older burn marks on his stomach, studying it and a nearby scar like they were telling her a story. Yeah, I'm not real proud of how I got these, he said, a little embarrassed at the memory. Or he was. That particular memory was blown aside when she suddenly grabbed his head and took him in a searing kiss, her tongue snaking past his lips while he was still processing things. HMMF. M. Cassandra purred, grinding against him slightly. She held the kiss for a little longer, her tongue flicking around and teasing him, before she pulled away. Without wasting a second, she pulled off her top, revealing breasts the size of beefsteak tomatoes. Izuku's eyes widened at the sight. Wow, those are as big as Raven's, weight, ack. He jumped when she started to pull at his sweatpants. Hey, Izuku, we're gonna order pizza. You okay with pepperwoe? Dick jumped when he walked back in. Kaz. He ran over. We talked about this. You don't strip Gucci RRRTTHHKKK. He shrieked incoherently, thanks to the taser Cassandra jabbed him with. Dick. You okay? Izuku called out as the former sidekick fell out in a twitchy heap, then turned his attention back to Cassandra. Where'd you even have that? She tossed it aside and resumed trying to get the sweats off him. Bap. Cassandra nearly fell off him when something swung into her face. It didn't look painful, but it more than startled both boy and girl. Miss Cain, neither the sofa nor the living room is the appropriate location for this, Alfred said sternly, still holding the newspaper he'd just used to bop her nose. Cassandra tried to give him a defiant scowl, but faltered and settled for pouting. Oh man. Thanks, Alfred. Izuku gasped, moving to pull his pants back up. I dunno why dash. That is what we have bedrooms for, after all. Cassandra stared at him briefly before her eyes lit up. Hey Alfred. Come on. Izuku yelped, suddenly getting dragged to, and up, the stairs. The man calmly watched the pair until they disappeared at the top. Now alone, he reached for the phone. Hello, Master West. Alfred Pennyworth here. Yes, I'm just calling to let you know, you just lost the bet. Alfred grinned at the groaning whine of defeat that followed. Ray? Jinx spoke up, following Raven's spell to another scratch. HM? When do you think that bad luck negation hex I cast on our boy will wear off? I think will is the more appropriate term, Jinx. /N, for those who keep saying it, no, Starfire won't be with Izuku. Neither is Blackfire. Captain Pimp. Mitsuki nearly fell off her chair in laughter. Since Izuku was, and she still had to wrap her head around the fact, with the Justice League, Inko had a bit more free time now. So the two women were able to catch up a bit more often, the cafe they were currently enjoying lunch being one such time. She damn near choked when Inko mentioned him facing off against a monster like Killer Croc, and managed to not only win, but put the man in Arkham's medical wing. Of course, once the shock of that settled, the damn woman hit her with more surprises, namely Izuku finding himself with multiple girlfriends, who were all well aware of each other. And didn't mind. Katsuki'll be lucky to find one that tolerates being around him with the attitude he's got. The thought. That boy of hers was even more surly after that day with the criminal who had that sludge quirk and the Martian Manhunter. She thought he'd be at least a little happy Izuku was getting a chance like that. Instead, however, the brat ranted and raved about how he stole what Katsuki felt he was owed. Croc learned he wasn't fond of that name the hard way apparently. Inko chuckled, fiddling with the sandwich in front of her. Mitsuki? Yeah. There's kind of an ulterior reason for why I asked you here. Oh? The blonde leaned in. This I gotta hear. Well, I need your advice on how to ask a certain someone out. You're going back to dating? Mitsuki was caught unaware. Inko was still married, wasn't she? But, what about Hisashi? I already called him. We still care about each other, but given how his job keeps him away, we agreed to swap to a more open marriage. Long as we let the other know we've started seeing someone, there's no harm done. Wow, so, does he know about Izuku? Yeah. I told him last time he called. Since he hooped and started singing Go Izuku Go, I'd say he agreed with the idea. Mitsuku snorted into her drink hearing that. He'll never change. So, who's the lucky guy, or gal? Johns. Inko answered, cheeks turning a brilliant pink. Joe, why does that name sound familiar, ? Mitsuki frowned and thought. Because that's Martian Manhunter's name? What? Keep it down. Inko chided her, swiftly looking around. Satisfied no one been close enough to hear, she settled back down. The Martian Manhunter? One of the original Justice League members? That Johns. I can't help it, we've chatted over the comm system, and I've just fallen for him. She sighed, getting a smile normally seen on love-struck schoolgirls. I mean, he's one of the first people to see any potential in Izuku. He has a fun sense of humor, handsome as hell. When we talk, I get this enjoyable sense of calm. And the fact he can shapeshift makes the dreams interesting? You can say that a guy. Inko's face turned neon red. Mitsuki. Not sorry. She cackled. But serious, you got it bad, girl. Inko just blushed harder before her friend scooted around to put an arm around her. Well, first thing to do, you want to ask him over the phone or in person? Phew, talk about an all-nighter. Jinx stretched as she and Raven followed Bruce out of the Batcave. Raven stifled a yawn. At least the armor's repaired. It'll smell like reptile for a couple days, though. Nothing a bit of airing out won't fix. Bruce looked around at where Izuku had been. Where'd he go? A cord of light, cheery humming drew their attention to Cassandra, almost skipping down the stairs. Morning, Cassie. Jinx waved. Cassandra. Bruce groaned, trying to ignore how she was wearing only a yellow shirt that barely went past her panties. Please put some pants on, or shorts at least dash. How'd she get Izuku's shirt? Raven asked, looked pointedly at her. How can you tell it's his? He's the only guy I know who's willing to wear a shirt that says pants on it. As if on cue, a tired, disheveled, and wore-out Izuku came staggering out behind Cassandra. His upper body was decorated with hickeys, bite marks, and a few scratches. What tear? He groaned. Well, looks like Wally's just lost the wager. Bruce thought, right before the greenette saw them. R.A. Raven. Jinx? He turned even paler. At least, I hope I can EX dash. Izuku. Raven cut him off, both girls making their way towards him. You remember what we said? About. He wobbled a little before she levitated him slightly with her magic. We were serious about being cool with you hooking up with girls that get your eye. Jinx patted Cassandra on the shoulder. Welcome to the club, by the way. Just let us know about it. Oh. He visibly relaxed. Think I'm the one who did the eye-catching though, hee hee. He let out a weak chuckle. Yeah, I'd say so. Raven traced a couple of the bite marks on his chest. So, how was he? Jinx nudged Cassandra. I'd make a guess, but... Cassandra stared at her briefly, right before letting out a happy little squeak, hopping giddily in place as she did. I'll take that as a not bad dot. Principal Nizu sighed contently. So, I take it we're all ready for next year's crop of students? The small rodent/canine/marsupial? Asked, downing the last of the tea he'd been drinking. Sekijiro shrugged. More or less, but don't you think it's a little early to be having this meeting? The entrance exam's still over 5 months away. No harm in making sure. Plus, this way we can be sure we have time to adjust for any ideas you or the others might have for the courses. Maybe, provided some of us actually bother to keep our classes. Sekijiro blared pointedly at Shota Aizawa, who was currently slouched in an armchair. The tattered-looking man looked like he couldn't be bothered to care. It's not my fault no one in that class didn't meet Dash. You expelled all 20 on the first day, Aizawa. He cut him off. They barely even time to get their schedules memorized. Even if you did manage to get them re-enrolled, they only agreed on the basis that none of them had to have you as their teacher, in any subject. He's got a point, Shota. Another baritone voice piped in, belonging to an athletically built blonde, 2 long bangs draping down from either side of his face. And that's not counting the parents who wanted a piece of you when their kids told them. Remember the woman who had that mantis shrimp quirk? Yeah, he should be glad she just wanted to slap him with those rocks she had for hands. Midnight replied, glancing over at the speaker. And doing a double take at the sight. TTT Tashinori. Been wondering when one of you would notice. The man laughed, causing the whole room to stare in surprise. He wasn't in his fully muscled form, but the skeletal appearance was gone. His narrow, angled face now resembled what he looked like well before his injury. The once sunken, hollow eyes were back to normal, and he wasn't slumping forwards. There seems to be something different about you. Nizu mused, giving him a once-over. New haircut. Change in diet. Oh yes, I see. When the blazes did you start getting bigger? As insane as it sounds, I was able to find a medical treatment that worked. Unfortunately, for security reasons, Chio's the only one I can give the details to. On the plus side, though, it's done wonders for my time limit, HA. He laughed at what was apparently a pun none of them got. Seriously, I can run around in full might more for a good 12 hours now before I gotta take a break. He leaned in towards the others. And you wanna know the best part? I haven't coughed up a drop of blood since the treatment. Not one bit. Meanwhile, Nizu's ears twitched rapidly, indicating that, despite his calm demeanor, his mind was going a mile a minute. By the time Toshinori was done, the mismatch of an animal was smiling in a way that showed he'd realized something that brightened up his day a little. Well, that explains why he of all people would hand-deliver a student application in the middle of the night. Well, we'll certainly have time to celebrate the good news later. For now though, we should get back to the task at hand. I understand we're getting a new exchange student in the applications this semester? Another? Cementos asked. There's a girl from the States that applied, a Pony Tsunatori, but I haven't heard about any others. Well, this one is a tiny bit unique. Nisa took out the application in question, holding it up so they could see the name. Izuku Midoriya. This young man is being sponsored by an unexpected group. Zuko looked at the batarang he'd just been handed, the side-shaped wings unfolding into the full weapon. You're going to teach me to throw these? Generally speaking. Bruce picked up another, and with a flick of his wrist, sent it spinning into the chest of a target dummy. Oliver agreed that this'll help in case you still need some range aside from arrows. He nodded his head towards the table covered with batarangs, deactivated sticky bombs, shock darts, and other selections of the man's throwing arsenal. Like with the arrows, don't worry about accuracy with these. Just use them to get a feel for it. Right. He took a moment to get accustomed to the weight, a pound and a half maybe? Taking aim at the torso, he drew back and hurled it. The batarang struck it in the shoulder, sideways, and clattered to the floor of the Batcave. More like a frisbee. Bruce spoke up. Let your wrist and elbow do the work. He looked over at the dummy. Good distance throwing it like that, though. Izuku took another batarang and let it fly. It hit and stuck this time, for a moment, before falling out. Just in time for the watchtower comm system to beep. I'll get it. Bruce said, heading over to the computer. Those are older ones, so they probably won't stay in anyway. Bruce, is Izuku still there? John S.'s face appeared on the screen. Instead of his usual stoic expression, he looked like a guy who was trying to figure out the best way to ask something. Something wrong? No, it's just, Inko asked me out. Do what? There was a loud ping. As a batarang bounced off a stalagmite, 20 feet behind him. While not quite how I'd phrase it, I'm curious as well. Bruce grinned in mild amusement. My mom? Seriously? Izuku ran over. Yes, and I just wanted to be sure you were okay with it. You see, back on Mars, when you wanted to ask a lady out, it was customary to ask her oldest male relative, father, brother, son, to see if they were okay with you dating her. Pretty much the same if a lady wanted to ask a guy out, ask his oldest female relative. It was more out of politeness than actual permission. John explained. Just felt like the right thing to do. Wow. Izuku chuckled weakly. Kinda surreal. I mean, Mom had told me she and my dad were planning to make their marriage a more open one. And, to be honest, I don't even know if I'd recognize the guy since he's been away so long. He chuckled again. And now my mom is wanting to go out with one of my coworkers. Never thought I'd use that collection of words in the same sentence. So, just don't let her near any wine. She tries to do kabuki when she gets drunk. Both Bruce and John looked his way. That's definitely a story for poker night. The billionaire commented. Out of curiosity, how did Izuku started? Actually, it was about an hour ago. JJ on? Inko popped up on the monitor. Monitor? Really, John? Bruce groaned. Mrs. Mitter, I mean, Inko. He replied, seeing the look she gave him. Izuku isn't currently dash. Hi, Mrs. M. Himiko squeed, tackling him slightly. If you're looking for Zukuin, he's not up here right now. Hello, Himiko. The woman smiled a bit. Actually, I wanted to talk to John. In private, please. Ooh, okay. She chirped. Ivy's been showing me how to make what she calls hemoglobin tablets, to help keep my quirk from going wonky again. She and Batman think they'll get it back to a normal state eventually. She promptly skipped off. Well, she's certainly looking better. Inko said. Quite. It's a bit of a miracle Izuku found her before it became irreversible. He looked back to see her getting out of earshot. So, you wanted to talk? Yes, boy, I'm not really sure how to say this without sounding like a total goober, but... She took a deep breath. Willie gout with him? Ag. I mean, you go out to you, I go you, oh crud. Inko, are you asking me out? He smiled. To be honest, you're broadcasting it like a tornado siren. That loud, huh? She blushed. I mean, I'm still married, but because my husband lives and works out of the country, we agreed to an open relationship, but this is the first time I've really tried this. I'd love to. Once she managed to recover from the ensuing bout of giddiness, we agreed to go out this weekend. He finished. We figured something simple like a picnic would be a good start. Just remember, no wine. Izuku said, getting a surprisingly respectful, if mainly in jest, salute before the connection closed. It was then he had a moment of dread. Oh crap, what if the paparazzi find out, or some of Jonas More rabid fans? I believe you have nothing to fret, Master Midoriya. Alfred said, coming down with a tray. I believe Manhunter has taken that into account and will most likely escort her to the Watchtower's aquacultural area for their rendezvous. Well, that's a relief. View's actually pretty nice there. Alfred sat the tray down, revealing a platter of sandwiches. Speaking of parents, Miss Kara called, from the Clark farm. She says it's time to introduce you to Ma and Pa. The Batcave was dead silent, until... Bruce hummed. Explains why Ken suddenly volunteered to go help with that salvage operation at Alpha Centauri. Superman, you chicken. Izuku muttered, when the thought finally sunk in. Nizu looked up from his paperwork when he heard his door open. All Might. Come in. Cementos said you were hoping to talk with me about something. Toshinori replied, taking an offered seat. Yes, actually, mostly an eagerness to satisfy a question I'd had for most of the day. Nizu gave his best inquisitive look. What's it like up on the Watchtower? Thank you all for watching this video and goodbye.